$250 million worth of bombs, in a single night. That is what America dropped on Iran last night. Not a warning shot, not a surgical strike. $250 million worth of American military ordnance landing on Iranian soil, in a single operation that was more intense and wider than anything since February 28th. And this morning Trump told the world what comes next. He said America will take total control of Iran's oil and gas industries. He specifically named Hague Island the terminal through which roughly 90% of Iran's oil exports flow, and said America will seize it in the not-too-distant future. Total control, Iran's oil, Hague Island. Those three things together represent a strategic escalation, unlike anything that has happened in this conflict. And tonight every American needs to understand what they mean, why Trump said them, what they signal about where this war goes from here, and whether they represent the final push toward a deal, or the beginning of something much larger. Good evening, America. This is Alta's Insights, episode 72. And tonight we are going to do the most important thing a news organization can do in a moment of genuine crisis. We are going to tell you the truth, all of it. Without panic, without propaganda, without the mainstream media's narrative that America is losing, or the cheerleaders' narrative that everything is going perfectly to plan. The full story, from the beginning of this conflict to tonight, every strategic decision, every turning point, every moment where the arc of this war shifted, and the honest assessment of where it stands tonight and where it goes from here. Stay with me for the full episode, because tonight, more than any night since this war began, you need the complete picture. If this is giving you information the mainstream media will not give you, share this video right now with someone who needs to hear it. Let us start not with today, but with the beginning, because to understand why Trump threatened to seize Hague Island tonight, you need to understand everything that came before it. The full 112-day arc of a war that has been the most consequential American military engagement since the Iraq War. On February 28, 2026, American B-2 stealth bombers flew from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri to the Persian Gulf. The strikes that night hit 3 Iranian nuclear facilities simultaneously. Fordow, Natanz, Isfahan, the core of Iran's uranium enrichment program, the facilities that were months away from producing weapons-grade material, all struck, all severely damaged. But that was not all that happened on February 28th. Something that most Americans never learned about that night is what made those strikes strategically historic beyond the nuclear dimension. The strikes also killed Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei. Think about what that means. The man who had led the Islamic Republic for 34 years. The man who had overseen Iran's nuclear program, its proxy network across the Middle East and its decades-long campaign against American interests. Gone, in a single night. The Iranian system did not collapse. The Revolutionary Guards maintained control. A successor was named. The regime continued functioning. But the psychological and strategic impact of losing Khamenei in the same night that its nuclear facilities were destroyed was enormous. Iran's command and decision-making structure was disrupted at the most critical moment. The people who knew exactly where every backup facility was, what every contingency plan contained, who had the codes and the relationships, and the institutional knowledge to reconstitute the program quickly, that entire network was thrown into chaos. That is why the ceasefire that came in April was achievable. Not because Iran chose peace, because Iran's military and political leadership needed time to assess what had actually been destroyed, what could be rebuilt, what was permanently gone, and what terms it could live with, given its suddenly drastically weakened position. The ceasefire that Pakistan brokered on April 8 was always fragile. Both sides knew it. Pakistan knew it. Qatar knew it. The terms were incomplete. The nuclear question was not resolved. The Strait of Hormuz was not fully reopened. The sanctions were not lifted. The frozen assets were not unfrozen. It was a pause, not a peace. And over the weeks that followed, both sides used that pause differently. Iran used it to stabilize its internal political situation after Khamenei's death, to assess the damage to its military infrastructure, to move its remaining enriched uranium stockpile, 440.9 kilograms of uranium, enriched to 60% purity, to locations it believed were safer from American strikes, to consolidate its Revolutionary Guard command structure, to determine what it could offer in negotiations and what was truly non-negotiable. America used the pause to maintain the naval blockade that was strangling Iran's oil revenue, to continue intelligence collection on Iran's remaining military and nuclear capabilities, to negotiate through Pakistan and Qatar on the framework for a permanent settlement, and to watch with growing frustration as those negotiations moved far slower than Washington had anticipated. The core issue was always money, not ideology, not nuclear principles. Money. Iran was demanding that the United States unfreeze more than $10 billion of Iranian assets held in foreign accounts as part of any deal. The Trump administration was willing to unfreeze some of it, not all of it, and not up front. The sequencing of asset unfreezing versus nuclear compliance measures became the central sticking point that kept the deal just out of reach for weeks. Meanwhile, Iran maintained its stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz. Not a complete closure, a partial chokehold. Enough to keep oil prices elevated. Enough to keep American families paying above $4 a gallon. Enough to maintain economic leverage over Washington, even as Iran's military capability was being steadily degraded. That economic leverage, the ability to keep American families paying elevated gas prices indefinitely, was Iran's most powerful remaining card. And Tehran was determined to play it for maximum value. Then came the Apache. On June 9th, an American Army Apache helicopter went down near the strait. The investigation confirmed Iranian fire brought it down, during a declared ceasefire. That changed everything. Not because it was a massive military event in itself, one helicopter, 2 crew members rescued, but because of what it signaled. Iran was testing whether America would respond to a direct military provocation during a ceasefire, whether the domestic political pressure from elevated gas prices and war fatigue would prevent Trump from retaliating. They were wrong about Trump. They are always wrong about Trump when they bet on him backing down. The response was immediate. 2 consecutive nights of strikes, more intense than anything since February 28th. $250 million of bombs in a single night. Strikes on manufacturing complexes, military barracks, guard bases outside Tehran itself. Iranian Revolutionary Guard headquarters struck. Communications infrastructure hit. Air defense sites destroyed. And this morning the escalation reached a new level entirely. Trump said America will take total control of Iran's oil and gas industries, specifically Karg Island. In the not-too-distant future, now let us talk about what Karg Island is. Because understanding why Trump named it specifically tells you everything about the strategic logic behind this escalation. Karg Island is a small island in the Persian Gulf, approximately 40 kilometers off Iran's southwestern coast. It is the terminal point for pipelines from some of Iran's largest oil fields. Roughly 90% of Iran's crude oil exports pass through Karg Island for loading onto tankers. The island has loading buoys that can handle some of the world's largest tankers simultaneously. Without Karg Island, Iran cannot export oil at meaningful scale. Without oil exports, Iran has almost no government revenue. Without government revenue, Iran cannot pay its revolutionary guards, cannot fund its proxy network, cannot maintain the social spending that keeps the population from open revolt. Karg Island is not a military target, it is an economic target. The most important economic target in Iran. And Trump just told the world America is going to take it. Now let me explain the strategic logic behind that threat, because it is more sophisticated than it appears on the surface. Iran's entire remaining leverage in this negotiation rests on its ability to keep the Strait of Hormuz contested and keep oil prices elevated. That leverage exists only as long as Iran has something to protect economically. A regime that has nothing left to lose negotiates very differently from a regime that is still trying to preserve its economic survival. By threatening Karg Island, Trump is telling Iran directly, your oil revenue is not safe. Your economic survival is not guaranteed. The leverage you have been playing for weeks to extract better terms from this negotiation can be removed permanently and quickly by American military action. That is not a threat of destruction. It is a threat of economic seizure, control, the United States taking over the operation of Iran's oil infrastructure, rather than destroying it, which means continued oil flow to global markets, which means gas prices potentially falling even faster, once American control is established. This is Trump applying the same logic he applied to the Panama Canal, to Greenland, to economic assets that America believes are being mismanaged or weaponized against American interests. The logic that control of strategic economic infrastructure is a legitimate tool of American national power. Now let me tell you about the most alarming development of this entire evening. Something that happened just hours ago as this episode was being prepared. Something that every American watching tonight needs to hear. Iran's Revolutionary Guard issued a statement saying it fired 12 ballistic missiles at Al-Azraq Air Base in Jordan, directly targeting locations where American F-35, F-15 and F-16 fighter aircraft are stationed. The IRGC claimed that a large number of the aircraft and key facilities were destroyed. Let me say that again, so it lands with the weight it deserves. Iran claimed it targeted American F-35 fighter jets at an American base in Jordan. Tonight, if that claim is accurate, it represents the most significant single Iranian military action against American forces of this entire conflict. F-35s are America's most advanced stealth fighter aircraft, each one worth more than $100 million. Losing them to Iranian ballistic missiles at a Jordanian base would be a major escalation with consequences far beyond anything that has happened in the last 112 days. The United States has not yet confirmed or denied the extent of damage at Al-Azraq. That confirmation or denial will be the most important piece of news that emerges overnight. Watch CENTCOM's official statement. Watch the Pentagon briefing. Watch what comes out of the White House in the next several hours. Here is the critical context every American needs to understand about Iranian military claims in this conflict. Iran has made dramatic military claims before that turned out to be exaggerated or false. When Iran claimed it had closed the Strait of Hormuz, U.S. Central Command denied it, and the oil markets did not move in a way that suggested belief. When Iran claimed it had struck American warships, CENTCOM denied those claims as well. The IRGC has a documented pattern of issuing maximalist claims about the effectiveness of its strikes for domestic political consumption, whether or not those claims reflect reality. So the question every American should be asking tonight is not whether Iran fired 12 ballistic missiles at Jordan. That part appears confirmed. The question is whether American F-35s were actually destroyed, or whether Iran's missiles were intercepted and the damage was minimal, as has been the case in every previous round of Iranian strikes on American bases. Jordan said it intercepted 20 Iranian missiles fired toward an area with American troops in the previous round, with no casualties. America's Patriot missile defense systems and layered air defense architecture in the region have performed exceptionally throughout this conflict. But here is what every American should understand, regardless of the outcome at Al-Azraq tonight. Iran firing 12 ballistic missiles, specifically at American combat aircraft, represents a new level of intent. Even if every missile was intercepted, even if no aircraft were damaged, the decision to target F-35s directly tells you something important about where Iran's military leadership believes this escalation is heading. They are not trying to end this war tonight. They are trying to change the military balance, to demonstrate that American air superiority, which has dominated every exchange since February 28, can be challenged, to show their domestic audience and the broader region that Iran can reach American aircraft, even at bases in friendly nations. That demonstration, whether it succeeds militarily or not, has strategic consequences that go beyond the physical damage caused. Now let me come back to the strategic picture and what tonight means for the deal. Iran's response to the Karg Island threat was not to come to the table. It was to fire 12 ballistic missiles at American fighter jets in Jordan. That tells you something important about the state of the negotiations tonight. Iran is not in a deal-closing frame of mind. It is in an escalation frame of mind. A regime that is hours away from accepting American terms does not fire ballistic missiles at F-35s. A regime that fires ballistic missiles at F-35s is a regime that has decided it needs to demonstrate military capability before accepting terms it finds humiliating. That means the deal is further away tonight than it was this morning, further away than it was when Vance said absolutely before November on Sunday. The escalation ladder has been climbed several rungs in the last 72 hours. And both sides are now at a point where the next decision made in Tehran and the next decision made in Washington will determine whether this conflict finds a path back toward negotiation or continues escalating towards something neither side can fully control. Now let me give you the honest assessment of the three scenarios for how this resolves from tonight's position. Scenario 1. Iran accepts terms within days. The combined pressure of $250 million in nightly strikes, the Karg Island threat and tonight's American response to the Al-Azraq attack convinces Tehran that the cost of continued escalation exceeds any possible benefit from better deal terms. Iran comes back to Qatar's mediators and signals willingness to accept the American framework. The deal closes. The strait reopens. Gas prices fall. This scenario is less likely tonight than it was 48 hours ago. But it is not impossible. Races that are being militarily degraded and economically strangled sometimes make rational decisions quickly when the alternative becomes sufficiently costly. Scenario 2. Controlled escalation continues for weeks. Both sides continue trading strikes at roughly the current level. American strikes degrade Iranian military capability further. Iranian strikes generate headlines without causing decisive damage to American forces. The Qatar Channel stays open but produces no breakthrough. The deal remains weeks away. Gas prices remain elevated through the summer. The midterm environment is shaped by economic frustration and war weariness, rather than strategic victory. This is the most likely scenario based on the pattern of the last 112 days. The conflict has repeatedly looked like it was about to escalate beyond control, and then pulled back. Both sides have demonstrated a preference for continued pressure over decisive escalation. Scenario 3. Full-scale war resumes. The Al-Azraq strike causes significant American casualties, or destroys American aircraft. Trump orders a response of a scale and nature that crosses a threshold Iran cannot absorb without a full military response. The ceasefire framework collapses completely. The conflict expands into something that looks less like coercive negotiation and more like a genuine war. This scenario is the least likely but the most consequential. And tonight, for the first time since the ceasefire in April, the conditions for it are more present than at any previous point. What every American needs to watch in the next 72 hours. Watch for CENTCOM's statement on Al-Azraq. If American aircraft were genuinely damaged or destroyed, the American response will be of a scale not yet seen in this conflict. If CENTCOM confirms no significant damage was done, tonight's IRGC statement was primarily propaganda, and the escalation remains within manageable parameters. Watch Brent crude. Oil prices are your most reliable real-time indicator of market confidence in the conflict's trajectory. If they spike past $110, markets are pricing in serious escalation. If they hold below 95, markets believe this stays contained. Watch Trump's Truth Social. The language will tell you where his head is. Very hard tonight is escalation language. Beautiful deal is negotiation language. The shift from one to the other happens fast when the back channel moves. Watch Qatar. The Qatari delegation was in Tehran this week. If they return or announce another visit, the diplomatic channel is still alive, regardless of what the military exchange looks like. Now let me close with what every American patriot needs to hear clearly tonight. Tonight is the hardest night of this entire conflict to maintain confidence. Iran has claimed it struck American F-35s. The deal that seemed close on Sunday is further away tonight. $250 million of bombs fell on Iran last night, and tonight more are coming. American families are still paying above $4 a gallon. The World Bank cut its global growth forecast. Europe raised interest rates because of this war. None of that is minimized here. It is all real. It all hurts. And every American who has been paying at the pump and watching this conflict drag on for 112 days deserves to have that acknowledged honestly. But here is what is also true tonight. Iran's nuclear program is gone. The supreme leader is dead. Iran's military capability is a fraction of what it was on February 27th. Iran's oil revenue is strangled. Iran's proxy network is severely weakened. Iran's air defense infrastructure is being systematically dismantled. And tonight Iran fired 12 ballistic missiles at American fighter jets, and still could not stop American strikes from landing on Iranian soil for the third consecutive night. That asymmetry matters. America is not being degraded in this conflict. Iran is. America is not running out of capability. Iran is. America is not struggling to find targets. Iran is struggling to find cover from American precision. Trump told Fox News today that Iran is really in submission. They just do not know it yet. That may be the most important sentence spoken about this conflict all week. Not because it is certain, but because it describes the strategic reality that all the alarming headlines tonight are obscuring. A regime that fires 12 ballistic missiles at American jets and still cannot stop $250 million of American bombs from landing on its soil. The same night is a regime that is running out of options, not gaining them. Tonight is hard. The next few days may be harder still, but America is fighting this war from a position of overwhelming military and economic strength against an adversary that is degraded, weakened, and running out of leverage. Hold the line tonight, America. Watch Al-Azraq. Watch Brent crude. Watch CENTCOM. Watch Qatar. And know that the president who dropped $250 million of bombs on Iran last night and named Karg Island this morning, and whose forces have not lost a single strategic objective in 112 days of this conflict, is still in control of this situation even on the hardest night of the war. Before we go, Alta's World News is funded by Americans like you, not corporations, not special interests, just patriots who believe the truth is worth fighting for. If tonight gave you the full story and the clarity nobody else is giving you, share this video right now with someone who needs to hear it, and stand with us today. altasworldnews.com/contribute. Stay proud, stay strong, stay informed. This is Alta's World News.